Thank you, Kevin. I think you made some really interesting and, in my view, valid points. Now, I'll set it out for those who haven't heard the original discussion last week. I take issue to the general outrage over instances of so-called cultural appropriation, which include cases of people sporting clothing and hairstyles, accessories, popularized by other cultures, like, for instance, cornrows, classic example, sombreros at parties, stuff like that. And there's been outrage at things like non-Japanese establishments like school cafeterias serving sushi, which I find ridiculous. My argument, aside from the fact that I find most of these instances to be deeply inauthentic expressions of manufactured outrage, you might call it, designed to give the complainant control and a sense of moral superiority over the alleged perpetrator. So this is my main argument. 1. Culture does not belong to anybody, but to everybody. Clothing, hairstyle, foods, musical genres, they're not the property of a single person or group of persons. They are in the public domain. My question is, who should be able to claim that you're wearing my hairstyle? Is it the person that invented the hairstyle, if such a person exists, or that person's family? Or a completely random stranger, totally unconnected to the originator, other than by virtue of sharing the same skin color or religion? So to what extent can I lay claim to spaghetti because my father was Italian? Would I have to be 100% Italian to do that, or 2/3? Or what if I was an Italian who's never even been to Italy and who's gluten intolerant? What's my claim? Or perhaps, the Chinese should step up, given that Marco Polo stole the idea of pasta from them. And my second argument is, what exactly is the damage? And that's the lawyer in me talking. Who is actually hurt here in these complaints? And I don't mean these exaggerated emotional ideas of, oh, it hurts, because it seems to me we're all very quick to declare how hurt we are all the time, how deep our suffering is. It's almost like we want to be victims and heartbroken. No, I'm asking a real question. When I wear dreadlocks, I wish I could, who is being hurt by this? And who is doing the hurting? Is it me? Because it seems to be self-evident that cultures don't do things. People do things. So if I'm wearing dreadlocks, how is my culture stealing anything? And by the way, what is my culture? Is it Jewish culture? Is it white culture? Is it male culture? Which is it? Because it feels that people who complain about these things kind of pick and choose depending on what they want you to feel in that moment. Anyway, in the dreadlock scenario, if anything, I as an individual am doing the cultural appropriation, not my culture. Should China sue me as an individual for my eating spaghetti, or should it sue the Italian state, or all Italians all over the world, even if they're not citizens? I'm saying, bring me specifics, not generalities, not my culture or your culture, but actual specific cases we can analyze and solve. And that's what Kevin's done, so thank you, because you've done that. And your points, they make a lot of sense, because you've clearly cited a scenario where there's been a victim, Little Richard. But my question is, a victim of what? You say the radio wouldn't play his songs, but it should be noted that his biography says this is because of pressure from clergymen and church groups who were pissed off because he'd reneged on a promise to give up music to become a minister. But let's say it was racial, which I wouldn't have a tough time believing given the time and place. I agree with your point that there was an issue in the past, but what was the issue? Because I don't think cultural appropriation is the right word for it. If your version of the facts is right, it seems to me Little Richard was the victim of racism, not appropriation. His exposure was limited by racist regulations and customs, and white artists, not white culture, but specific people, and you mentioned Pat Boone, benefited from it. So even granting it was all racism, and I can't because there's too many examples of phenomenally successful black musicians at the time, but let's go with it. It seems we have grounds for Little Richard, the individual, the artist, not the black cultural representation, to complain that his music, not the music of all African Americans, but his work benefited other individuals, not cultures, due to racist restrictions. I know it sounds like the same thing, but it really isn't. He was damaged, not a culture, but him. But anyway, Kevin, you made a very strong point that really highlights this important distinction, so thank you.